Welcome to this video tutorial. This is from the Theory and Methods question, the 20 marker, and this was on paper 3 in June 2017. Just a little bit of an overview about what the question was, and what I aim to do on this tutorial is just go through what the question was, some pointers about how to answer a 20 marker, examiner comments, and a little bit of an overview of a student's answer, just identifying the main points. Okay, so hopefully it'll be quite interesting for you. So a 20 mark evaluate question, you've got 30 minutes to answer it. Just make sure you read the item carefully. This will provide you with the hooks. Make sure that you quote them and look for the question hooks as well. This will give you a further opportunity to show application of your knowledge. Make sure that you start with a clear introduction. I'm going to be referring to the Hectic Teacher. She gives a nice way of introducing essays, so I'm going to refer to that. Give a range of explanations carefully applied to the question, application of examples, the item, analysis and evaluation, and end with a thoughtful conclusion that refers back to the debate. Again, something that the Hectic Teacher does recommend. Okay, so just from this paper, they identified that the majority of students did have at least a basic understanding of functionalist, Marxist and often feminist. Weaker answers didn't go beyond this. The better answers gave at least a basic account of at least one of the theories, and the better answers had the debate of the usefulness of the approaches. Quite a lengthy feedback on this question actually, because I think some students did find this quite difficult. Some students took the question as an opportunity to write descriptively and at length, just describing the theories with very little application to the question, and some students did lose focus of what the question was actually asking, shifting towards a structure action rather than the consensus conflict debate, which was what it was asking about. Also, when students did refer to labelling theory, for example, they did have a basic knowledge of it, but it didn't link into the conflict part, so there was very weak application. So hopefully the student answer will show you how you could start to apply to the answer. Okay, so firstly, using the item, this is what I would recommend that you would do, is spend a little bit of time at the beginning, spend at least 5 minutes just planning your answer, thinking it through, how you're going to structure it, what's going to go in your intro, what hooks are you going to use for the item. It'll make sure that you give a good breadth of knowledge, but also it'll just make clear about what the debate is within the question. So just breaking the item down for you. So we've got firstly the consensus approach. So you could link in the shared values of Durkheim, parts working together harmoniously, which is linking to Parsons with his agile schema as well. On the conflict side, feminist and Marxist, it gives you the Marxist, so they want you to go a little bit further than that, so talk about maybe the different types of Marxist, and how one class, so give the example of what the class is, bourgeoisie exploit the other, or likewise men exploiting women. It does mention labelling theory as well, so you could talk about Becker, the power to impose labels on other groups. Cicero as well is an applied example through crime, and then you have got Weber with his social action, and how people might use their actions to reinforce a conflict within society, and you could talk about how you might rationally act in such a way which would maximise profit for low wages. Okay, so let's start with a strong intro. Now, the Hectic Teacher, absolutely love some of the resources that she is producing, absolutely fab. If you've not been over there yet, just make sure that you check out her website. And she recommends that you start with a strong intro, which outlines 3 things, which is context, content, debate, and I've highlighted them there. So firstly, what's the context of the question? Well, it's conflict consensus. Make sure that you refer to that. They're both structural approaches, and they both give a valid explanation to the workings of society. Next bit is your content. So basically, what are you going to write about? I'm not expecting you to write everything that you're going to write about here, but at least give a little bit of an outline. It just gets you writing. And then you have got the debate. The debate is, which is better, the conflict or the consensus, or are they both no good? That would be a decent start to your answer. Okay, so let's have a look at this student's paragraph. So we've got this well-structured paragraph, and what I've highlighted there is, in this case, is using the item and application to the question. So this is your AO2 really. So you can see that the student has used the item more than once. They've applied their knowledge, talking about Marxism, talking about exploitation. We've mentioned Karl Marx with his base superstructure model. We've mentioned keywords like alienation, application of religion in the relevant context, in this case, using hymns to reinforce ideology to promote the power, legitimising class inequality. And then here is the application to the question, which some students did find hard to do, or they struggled to make that link. And this student does that here. It's more useful than functionalist approaches that focus on society as a social system working harmoniously to meet society's needs. This is a contradiction because it's working passively to meet the needs of the elite. So we're comparing that consensus to the conflicts theory. And then they've done quite well actually to apply, creating a value consensus, but it's through a false class consciousness via ideology, not through the consensus which Durkheim would talk about, or Parsons. Okay, so this student does pretty well. Second paragraph, they continue with the Marxist theme, or the conflict theme, and this time turning their attention to feminist. Again, lots of item there. In that first paragraph, you have got different types of feminists mentioned. So you've got your radical feminist and comparing it to your liberal feminist there. Some application to the criminal justice system there. And they've mentioned Gashuni, how it might take a generation for patriarchal attitudes to break down. And again, they try to make that application to the question. Consensus, such as Parsons, believe that the gender roles are biological, which benefits individual compared to society as a whole. Not as explicitly the link to the question there, but the student has tried to do it a little bit. Further development is in the orange. This student then continues, turning their attention now to functionalist. Functionalists would disagree with the conflict explanations, suggesting that they are deterministic and over-exaggerate the exploitation, not really directed at a theory in particular, but I suppose it's a nice start, but it does need developing. Again, we've got the clear item link, the shared values, social solidarity and consensus, Parsons' organic analogy, application of education religion there, and examples of what the institutions are, developing onto Parsons' agile schema, and then you've got an explicit evaluation point. It's not useful because it does not consider who do not have access to the goals, which I would suggest that the student needs to develop this into Merton. And then it's weakly applied to the question, so it doesn't do it as well, but hopefully you can see the difference between that paragraph and the first paragraph where they really did explicitly link it to the question. Last one, we've got labelling theory, as mentioned in the item. Now this student does it well compared to the examiner comments, who argued that students failed to apply it to the conflict and the power debate. This student does have a good go at it. They use Becker and they talk about labelling in two different contexts. So they compare it to the school and the criminal justice system. So we've got those that have the power to label certain students negatively, those that are working class, ethnic minority, applying the self-fulfilling prophecy correctly, internalising the label. This is a conflict between the powerful teachers and the powerless students. Further application with the crime and the powerful police and the criminal justice system. Cicero typifications is being mentioned there, leading to conflict within society. Being labelled attaches a stigma to people, making them less powerful. The student does pretty well. We've got some explicit evaluation there as well. For example, Fuller's Girls in Education. But this is useful in highlighting the further conflict within society, going beyond the traditional Marxist approaches, identifying the groups that have the power to label, which is far away from the consensus approach, that functionalist who assume that labelling does not exist because it's based on meritocratic. So this student has tried to link it back in there once again. Okay, so I've gone through 4 massive paragraphs there. Remember, you've only got 30 minutes to answer this. What I have tried to squeeze in is a little bit about postmodernist as well. Rather than, this isn't your conclusion, but this student did mention briefly about postmodernists, but actually located it within the debate of the question. So postmodernists would say all these theories about today, they speak about a society of the past that isn't as diverse as today's society. If these theories that we've mentioned so far want to be considered useful, they need to be applied to a postmodern society. Lyotard would call them meta-narratives. And then we've got this link to the debate, talking about the hectic teacher once again, referring back to the relevance in the question. They are considering more useful, more realistic opposition to the consensus approach. So the students has linked it back to the question. Okay, I feel like I've rushed a little bit, but I just wanted to give you a good overview of the students' answers and how the students has tried to show a good breadth of knowledge. Now, it didn't get top band, it was just short of that, but it was top of the second band because it did well at a number of things. One, it had a good range of knowledge, keywords, understanding of a range of theories. The use of the item is very decent. It starts with the item and it allowed the student to develop their knowledge. The application of examples were from education, crime, religion, and it was done in an appropriate way. And evaluation, occasionally, they were relevant as well. What it needed more of was more of that link back to the question, the explicit reference to the debate. Is conflict more useful than the consensus approaches? And a little bit more of a discussion of that debate. It did it well in the first paragraph, but it needed to sustain it throughout the answer. Okay, so a decent student got a decent mark for this question, came away with 15 out of 20. Which I think is quite realistic for the majority of students to aspire to, this level of knowledge. There was lots of hints that you could have gone into a little bit more detail, but it does give you a little bit of a realistic expectation about what you could be using and what you could be applying in your answer. Okay, so thank you for listening. A little bit of a happy hello to Chris Wellgrove students. Hello, 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 because he's asked me to say hello to you. But thank you for listening. If you've got any comments, any questions, pop them in the comments below and I will aim to get back to you. Okay, thank you once again. Have a great evening. See you again.